I don't know whether to thank Dick or not, but he asked me about a half hour to come up and say something, and so I thought I would, you know. And so I kind of made a sermon out of it, a title, How the Lord Got People to Come to Church. And how the Lord got people to come to church here is just a little bit how he's going to do it in the last days. I think in the last days, people that go to evangelistic meetings will be sitting in an apartment on an iPhone or whatever, listen to arguments in the Supreme Court or in Congress. But how did it happen then? About 100 years ago, and I've often said, if I'm faithful to go to heaven, there's a couple people I'd like to meet. Number one is my grandfather. Number two is the call porter who visited my grandfather about 100 years ago. And they talk about, they had kids up here today. I would love to talk to those call porters who went out over the country, didn't know where they was going to sleep. And they would sleep at different farms. And I've often liked to ask them, what did you eat for breakfast? If you was an Adventist, because most breakfasts in my family was fried potatoes, hog paw, and I don't know what they scraped off of hogs and stuff, but that's what they had, you know. And I don't know how they ate. But anyhow, this call porter convinced my grandfather to buy the 5 books. And he was illiterate, but somehow he was self-educated. And he read these books at night by the candlelight. And he told my mother, if you ever meet a group of people who keep these books, join them. Well, my grandfather passed away when my mother was 13. But it always made an impression on her. These people were very religious. They come from the Church of the Brethren, and they were, when it come to Sunday, they made us look ashamed how they kept Sunday. There was no work done, there was nothing. That's the way they kept Sunday. Very religious, depended on God. And there was 7 brothers and sisters in my family. And all of a sudden, the depression come along. The weather was terrible. There was nothing to eat. My mother said, people come from the city to the country. They didn't go from the country to the city. Everybody was poor, but they didn't know it. They were happy. And so, all of a sudden, my mother got married. My dad was not a Church of the Brethren. He was a Church of God. And that was just a little conflict because every religion has a little different. And so they moved in Grant Street. And it was only about 100 yards from the armory where they met. And my mother, when she heard about this, see, they didn't have TV. They didn't even have radio, so those out in the country really didn't know what was going on. And so we were considered a cult. We wasn't allowed to announce things in the paper. We wasn't allowed to put advertisement in stores. But anyhow, word got around. And my mother invited her brothers and sisters to come. And it's a matter how, it's just like what happened then to my family will happen more as we go on, especially in the last time when there's nothing to eat, there's nothing in your bank account. Things can get serious. Things were bad. I can my parents got married. I had a brother, another brother, and then I come along. And I can remember we didn't have sugar. We didn't have salt. We had to walk and go get gas. We had these little, what they call them, tokens to buy stuff. Things were bad. The Lord was coming soon. The Lord was coming soon. It was that bad, you know. And so my mother invited all her friends because the Lord was coming. You know who the Antichrist was then? Adolf Hitler. He was considered the Antichrist. Things were terrible. But it was only a matter of years the Lord was coming. And so you get all these people to come to your meetings. The Lord said, I'm just going to give you a preview of what things are going to happen. And so Uncle Irvin came, Aunt Ina, Aunt Claire, Uncle Harry, Aunt Mary, my mother, Aunt Mabel all come. And it's a matter. And they come to the meetings, they started making their decisions. And my uncle, he growed hogs. And he would, I don't know what they called them, salted hogs or whatever, sides. And my mother always got a bunch off of them. They hung it down in the cellar. Well, guess what my mother did to them when she got baptized? She went down. I can remember, it's just like it yesterday. I can remember coming up step with these old salted hams. What did that do to my uncle? He got so mad that the family reunion was no more. That's how family was affected. My Aunt Clara, she married a guy who was Roy in Uppity in the Church of the Brethren. And there's a verse in the Bible that says women are supposed to be what to men? Subjected to your husband. She loved this message. She came when he went on trips, missionary trips. She would come, but she would never leave. She would never leave her church or her husband because of that decision. Aunt Mabel, Dick's mother, came. My mother went, and Uncle Harry came and went. Aunt Mary come, and it was just unbelievable how many people. I had 9 people join this church, the first group that was related to me. And so we say this church ain't growing, but I think it's wrong. If we take all the people that was baptized in this church and add them all together where they're at, I go through there was 45 just of my mother's alone that came to church and was baptized here. I got Spanglers who's doing other work at other places. I got Carla Kelly Blue, who's a school teacher in Shenandoah. We just see all the people. We don't stick around like Mennonites. We got this great Adventist message, But things changed. Hoover come in and said, I'm going to put 2 houses, 2 cars in every garage, and 2 chickens in every pot. And then we decided as Adventists we're going to take the front porch off and make a TV room out of it, And we're going to take the garden away. Okay, brother?
Real quick, I just want to say, the book that they were giving out that her father had purchased, she's seen those pictures on the screen because back then the great controversy had pictures in,
right.
And that's what brought her to.
Thank you.
To
I need help.
You
better stay up here, brother.
I just want to draw that out.
So anyway, it's amazing what's going to happen in the last day. But we've really grown. But I went to Blue Mountain Academy. The sacrifice, there's a thing in the Adventist message. This work started in sacrifice. It's going to end in sacrifice. But I tell everybody, like I said, we took the garden and put a swimming pool there. If the Adventist church then became part of the world because of materialistics, in 30 years after we baptized these people, there was a thing up in New York called Woodstock. If we would have had the same preachers, the same condition, the same entertainment, the same the vacations, the trips, how many people would we to God? But in the last days, brothers and sisters, we are going to see, and we pray for it. I pray that I can look at my town, and I don't. But Adventists will complain. We're going to cut your Social Security in half. Lord ain't coming till it happens. You don't have nothing in your bank account. You got to pray for the Lord to give you something to eat. And I loved your sermon this morning. We need love, but we also have to remember this church started on sacrifice. Mrs. White's husband cut wheat for 12 hours a day to get a couple cents to start the present truth. How many hours are we going to spend out working physically? Instead of, Joe Cruz wrote a book that I love, Creep and Compromise. We need that because we have compromised our attitude, our standards. So anyhow, keep praying for each one. The Lord's coming. And are we preparing? Because love what in the community, we're going to have all kinds of people come to us and ask us for help. And that's, and I still say, someday We're going to set and we're going to see the Sabbath argued in the Supreme Court. We're going to see a lot of things happen, before the end comes. Are you really prepared for it? Remember, this county alone, we're gaining 3,000 people. This country's adding 5 million. And if you look around this weather and look at this week and look at the weather, just remember, the Lord's getting the church ready. Don't complain about the heat. I hope that your prayer for the Lord to come will be answered. So thank you very much.